All right, we're back on a Monday with the Awesemo Odds betting show. And man, did we have a jam-packed week one in the National Football League, a jammed week two in college football. A lot to look back at, including Sunday night. But make no mistake, we will dive headfirst into Monday night's game. BetMGM powering everything here. So we'll pay attention to all the odds that they have and give you some solid picks. And we, of course, it's not me. It's the combination of myself and more so Ben Rasa at JazzRaz DFS on Twitter, at Shando Show for me. Yes, Jordan is in the house producing. So on your way to leaving us a thumbs up and subscribing to the Awesemo Odds channel. Say hi to Jordan as well in the chat. Rasa, we got through week one, barely, as we still have one more game to go, but it definitely was an adventure, to say the least.
Always an adventure. Start of NFL. I missed it. By 1:30, I was wondering why I missed it. But you know what? That comes with what is always a fun Sunday. Some good, some bad. And that's good. I think the trick, Eitan, I always love this after week one, is what do we take from what we saw to apply it? But how do we not overreact? Because you see one game and suddenly the Packers are going to go 0-17. The Texans are way better than everybody thought, blah, blah, blah. Some of that may be true, but some of it may just be an outlier game week one. So how do we take that information without overreacting?
Well, what's the biggest takeaway? Not me getting burned by Ryan Fitzpatrick's injury or burned by the fact that Aaron Rodgers simply didn't want to play football this weekend, and it would have been nice to know that ahead of time. But look, there were some positives as well. And granted, my pockets are a little lighter for fading the Philadelphia Eagles, but my heart is also a little fuller as a result of that. So you're right. There's so many things week one that went really well or really bad for a team. And it's kind of hard to kind of navigate that gray area. So what would be a big takeaway from you that we can apply moving forward, even and especially, Ben, if it's simply week one to week two?
Yeah, I think it's still, seeing how these teams are kind of going to deploy, the quarterbacks. What we saw with the Saints, this is a team that clearly, I'm not going to bury Drew Brees, but it seems like they're pretty comfortable with the new playmaker with Jameis, that he's a little more dynamic. They can stretch the field. We didn't have to see Kamara deployed and whatnot. And then just where the league is shifting in general. Mobile quarterbacks are going to be a prerequisite. Not that you have to be Lamar, but it is just Jalen Hurts is the type of player that every team is going to be after just because he can bail you out. We saw Kyler, who's obviously a unique athlete, but more and more, it's such a tougher team to defend when you have a guy that you don't have to, you have to worry, is he going to just take off? Whereas some of the statues, they can be very effective, of course. But man, I do think I was very impressed with some of these dual threat quarterbacks yesterday.
It's amazing to see, because you're right. And I saw it. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. It can extend life on plays. It can be such a big difference. It's also something you can take advantage of from a player prop standpoint. We've got a guy who can move around tonight by all means in Lamar Jackson. So before we kind of shift and look at tonight specifically from a team standpoint, there wasn't really anything brutal, I would say, like results. The Atlanta Falcons just didn't show up. The Green Bay Packers didn't show up. Washington, talk about it, just a hit to their football team with some really legit long shot odds of a squad that could win the NFC East, and really just, especially if you're hedging deeper into the season, turn around a decent long shot number. Now they're shot because of a quarterback injury, at least for the next couple of weeks. But there really wasn't something, at least where I got burned, where I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, at the end of that game or something towards the end of that, at least for the tickets that I had, where I'm looking back thinking I was on the right side, but I just got burned in the rear by it.
So a couple things there. And Chad, obviously chime in with how you guys did. If you had any bad beats, we want to hear them. Everybody, it's a team effort here. Yes. The misery loves company style. I did not have this, but man, Eitan, does this not preach what we talk about here, which is jump on lines early. If you had a ticket late with the Niners and you didn't cover that game, that is brutal, because there were 7.5s out there. Certainly it went to 8, it went to 8.5, it went to 9. And the Lions had no business. The old double 2-point conversion, 16 points in about 2 minutes to cover that game. Really ugly beat if you had the Niners, particularly if you didn't get the good line, of course.
Worst beat of the week.
No doubt.
Army giving up
Oh
the
my
cover.
God.
Or the one you just laid out where you get backdoored by the Detroit. Because I guarantee you, Ross, a lot of people either took 8.5, or as I put in the chat to start our Sunday show, San Fran minus 9.5. I think a lot of people bumped it up just off a confidence bet. Like, yeah, I'll take the extra point and a half. What's the worst beat between Army on Saturday or Detroit coming back on Sunday?
Yeah, Army, that was a tough one. No business not covering, but you know what? We move on there. I'm going to throw out one of my own. And listen, I'm not alone in this camp, but we also preach one of the biggest, plus EV spots you can get to is if you see news and the books don't react to it quickly enough. And yesterday, one of the big surprises right before kickoff, Trey Sermon inactive. Yes. Raheem Mostert's rushing prop was at 60, 62-ish, and it moved basically 20, 30 yards up after that news. I was able to catch it at the beginning, and unfortunately, he was injured quite early. Didn't have a chance. Elijah Mitchell comes in and just looks fantastic, who you're going to hear me, on the Fantasy Football Show in about an hour, Eitan. I brought up Elijah Mitchell on our first ever show over there. That is a guy I was always high on. Didn't think he'd have opportunities. That one stung because Mostert would have had a huge, huge game yesterday.
Absolutely. And you're right. That was gigantic to see that from a DFS standpoint for anybody playing player props to just as a whole. And you never know, maybe things change as far as the backdoor cover, just the game flow changes where you're not having to go to guys deeper on the bench. And we'll see how that impacts moving forward as we will get to the look ahead lines for week 2, week 3 as well in college before we get out of here. We're going to lock it up. So we need a couple of things on Monday here for you on this program. Your worst beat of the week. And then also, as we'll look ahead before we get out of here, could be lock it up tonight. It could be lock it up something later on. Maybe it's a baseball play. It doesn't always have to fit our little football box here. It could be anything and everything that we give before we get out of here, Ben.
No doubt about it. Yeah, it could have been Medvedev who mopped the floor with Joker. That was an outrageous performance. And your boy, shout out to John Shelton in chat. Good guy, friend of the show, cashing some tickets. Some of those teasers came through, and we like to see that. I do want to ask you before we move to Monday night, some of these teams, I know you mentioned Green Bay, who was a straight no-show, but I want to ask you about Tennessee. Arizona looked really, really good. Kyler did his thing. Derrick Henry, non-existent. Julio, it's going to take some time. I mean, this is where I want to talk about overreaction or stay the course. I'm really high on the Titans to win the South. I don't think you need to panic yet, but did you see anything from what, you saw from them yesterday to worry you going forward, I guess?
Not anything, I think, sustainable.
Okay.
It's week 1. It's surprising. Like, I think you can separate Derrick Henry being a non-factor, the offense, especially in the air. I mean, you can look at Brown as far as what he put up, but it was nothing dominating by any means from this offense. And I think we've come to expect that. Look, Arizona's defense getting better, already a solid unit. So I'm not nervous or concerned. If you had like I do, an over 9.5 win ticket for the Tennessee Titans, I still think you're in really good shape. Look, that division is dog shit. And the Colts are closer, I think, to that line of maybe not being great as opposed to the Titans, who could separate themselves in a one-horse race. Point being is that they lost to a really good football team, Ben, in a really good division. And I think that I wouldn't take much away from it long term. Like, I'm not panicking. I'm not trying to get on a site, where you can sell your futures tickets. Screw this 9.5 win thing. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be pissed off. Like, if I had the Titans yesterday, I'd be really upset by the way in which they played, but that wouldn't mean that I'd be off them the following week. I actually think there's a really good bounce back opportunity for a couple of these teams, including Tennessee, who just got flat out embarrassed this past weekend.
No doubt. I'm not overly concerned. I think that this could be a good opportunity. Not that the odds have radically shifted, but I still think to win the South, they're the team that I would want. Houston and Jacksonville, they're irrelevant still in my mind. And the Colts, certainly, I thought the Colts would play a lot better, and they didn't. They didn't look abysmal, but they certainly were a step behind what, let's be real, the NFC West looks like a division where you don't want to be messing around. All four of those teams looked tuned up and ready to go. That is going to be an absolute battleground to see who wins that division.
All right, hit us up as we see people popping in. Nice to see John Shelton there sticking his chest out, cashing those tickets as well. Hit us up again with the worst beat of the week, or if you have a lock it up ready to go for us, and just smash away on that thumbs up button and make sure you are subscribed to the channel, the Awesemo Odds channel, the Awesemo DFS channel, and the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, as Ben mentioned. Myself, Ben, and Lofty coming up on that at 2:00 Eastern. BetMGM, we want you to take advantage of this promo code real quick. Awesemo, AWESEMO, risk-free bet up to $1,000. Make sure you sign up where it's legal, of course, and take advantage of this insane promo code. All right, my friend, we already know about the main injuries, and that's what's happened in the backfield. Latavius Murray added to the Baltimore Ravens running back core, not to make up for the loss of two guys, but to help mitigate the damage. So coming into it, I think it's pretty much just game flow with Lamar, what we expect, and whatever you're looking at with the Raiders and trying to find any angle that you've seen here.
So no doubt, losing Dobbins, losing Edwards, it hurts. But I'll be honest, when you're looking at a spread and a game like this, I think the system still really masks it. I'm sure they'd want to have these guys, but I don't think that Baltimore is going to be that adversely affected. I do think, as we dive into it, though, I've been beating this drum all week, and I'm going to continue, that Lamar may be more aggressive on the ground tonight. I wouldn't be stunned to see him on some of these reads to take the ball, keep the ball, especially if it stays competitive. And that is really how I'm spearheading everything I'm doing today. We're certainly going to have DFS coverage all night leading up to lock. Lamar Jackson, to me, is going to probably take more of the offense on himself than he normally would because of these injuries.
Yeah, and think about that. From an overall standpoint, that doesn't necessarily mean more points. To me, that means the ball stays in bounds a lot more. That means that the ball doesn't hit the ground, maybe is a better way to put it, and the clock is going to move. And how much are you expecting Derek Carr to throw the football tonight? I mean, if we're in a realistic range, 30 to 35 times, maybe 40 times tonight, I still don't think that's enough to, if anything, the lower he throws, right, the better. He'd have to be in like the 50-plus clip, and where every pass or every play, part of me, is him dropping back, a throw, stopping the clock off incompletes. I think the clock moving is definitely one of our best friends tonight, as far as just an overall theme to approach it.
Yeah, no doubt. That's something I want to get into. And you know what? I'm just going to dive into some of my bets. Let's get this started.
Do it.
I'm going to start, and I've mentioned this before. I got a little more value, but the line is still very secure. We talked about this on our previous shows. Lamar Jackson rushing total. It is holding pretty steady.
Yeah.
It's still 69.5. The juice is rising. So I am getting some value there. I hit this last week. I'm still comfortable, though. It's up to -1. Man, I did a show this morning. It was at -125. Now it's at -135. I'm telling you, this line is going to keep moving by kickoff. If you want to get this, now is the time. I got it early last week, better than this. And it's just a simple fact. Eitan, here's what I did. I looked at Lamar's rushing attempts line. It's 10.5. The over is -225. So clearly the books are saying this guy's going to probably be running 11 or more carries tonight. I went and looked. When this guy has double-digit carries, he's got the same monster games. He's live for the 100-yard bonus. Late in the season, he had 10, 13, 11, 16, and 9 carries. In those double-digit carry games, 80 yards, 97, and 136 yards rushing. I think this is going to be one of those type of vintage Lamar performances. He's had some other games that were more pedestrian and more middling, but I just look at tonight. If they're expecting the volume that the books are showing, how can you not like Lamar to be a really, really lethal weapon on the ground tonight?
It's amazing that 69.5. BetMGM only has it juiced to about 135 compared to, as you mentioned, over 2-1 you're laying there for 11 minimum rushing attempts. It just feels like everything from game plan to, especially when something breaks down, like think about this, the difference between the offensive line and the offensive line as a unit staying there and moving the ball down the field on the ground versus not being able to protect Lamar Jackson is not anything that impacts Lamar. Like the plan, meaning the plan is for having him to move around and have the ball in his hands. If anything, way more than we've seen even last year, where running backs behind him are healthy. Like Latavius Murray is not just going to pick up 50 touches tonight because Dobbins and Gus are out. There still is going to be a lot of focus from Baltimore on Lamar Jackson. And it's not like another quarterback or 10 in the league who can move, but they're cautious. They'll put Lamar Jackson in any situation possible if he can break a run. So the only thing that anybody would look at would try to be full on contrarian here and say, well, maybe there's some way in which Lamar doesn't run 11, 12 times and maybe stays at 10. So let me take that plus 160. But as you just laid out in the end of that season to where we are now with the running back situation, I don't even think that's worth it. Like, I'd rather it be maybe 180 or 200 of a return, and I'd take that risk, not plus 160.
It's a situation, again, I think when you get into the mind or you try to anticipate kind of what Baltimore is doing late in the season, they really had to push it. They were gearing up, not down. They had some injuries. They had some bad play. They dealt with some COVID issues, and Lamar was taking it upon himself. Tonight in a competitive game on the road, I think we see that again. It's not to say that they can't run the ball and that Lamar is going to be carrying it 25 times. That's ridiculous. But he's so dynamic when the plays break down. His yards per carry is huge. It's not like a normal running back, of course, because his carries are just so lethal. He gets in space. If you're going to give me what, again, over 10.5 carries is minus 225, I don't even want to bet that. I'm just using it as an indicator to say, okay, there's a very good chance that he sees 11 or more carries. And if that's the case, I feel very, very comfortable at 69.5 rushing yards, him pushing over there. So that's where I am with him. No doubt about it.
Real quick, Ben, he's got an over of 19.5 total technically, but the over is only at minus 105 for the longest rush for Lamar Jackson. I mean, look, this is something where they could prepare for 6 months to try and limit the space with Lamar Jackson. That dude gets out in open space and he's gone. So it's a risk. I understand it's a risk, but at the same time, it's not, it's not 28.5. It's not 30.5. And just like that, rushing attempts has just been taken off the board by BetMGM. They must have heard our show.
Times are tough.
BetMGM is just taking rushing attempts off the board.
Let me ask you this though. I'm gonna pull a you. No, this is a good one though. This is nothing crazy with alternative lines and you got to do this and that. Lamar Jackson to record 100 plus rushing yards tonight on BetMGM, plus 300. That's pretty juicy for me. You're getting 3-1 that he crosses the century mark. I think that when you're talking about the longest run, if he rips off a run of 20 plus yards tonight and he has double-digit carries, that seems like he's going to have a decent chance to eclipse that century mark, and you're getting 3-1. Obviously, you're not winning that more than 50% of the time, but you don't need to. So if you want to be aggressive, I don't think it's crazy to have a splash play on Lamar, to have a big game on the ground, full 100-yard mark.
So think about this, and this is where it gets a little crazy, not wacky like me, but just a little crazy here, where you can build off of this narrative where Lamar Jackson on the ground equals Ravens success, or Ravens down. It's not like they're going to abandon him running because he can make up as much ground as any deep play in the air. So we'll roll over, and it's just moved now to 140. So we'll roll over Lamar Jackson 69.5 rushing yards. Rushing attempts is back up. I'm going to stay away from this because it's minus 225. Are you on board with my over 19.5 longest rush? Or are you staying away from that?
I don't mind. I'm honestly on all. I lean to the over on all Lamar rushing props. My favorite is 69.5. If you want to take a 3-1 shot at 100 or more, I think this is one of the narratives I'm willing to get. I also, again, I hit this line. This line is moving. It's moving on the air right now. As you said, it's up to minus 140. So we're creating value. If you're locking this in by kickoff, I have a feeling even minus 140 is going to be gone. So I'm with you, but look at chat anticipating what's going on here. Kickstart asked about Derek Carr's over
Ooh.
or under rushing yards. And that is something before the show that you mentioned to me that you might have some interest in.
Absolutely. And look, I think this is one of these bets where no matter how much data and math you can come up stacked with all of this paper about Derek Carr, his rushing tendencies, the history of him moving around. This is one scramble. That's it. One scramble. It's like a team making an error in baseball, and it might keep you watching if the Raiders are getting pummeled tonight, which I don't think is going to happen, but it might just keep you watching. Look, I think the number is so low, Ben, that you almost have to take it. And I know, look, this is never a strategy, a long-term winning, successful strategy here where you just look at something and think, well, it's so ridiculously low, I have to go over. But let's be honest here. First off, it is juiced to the over, so you're taking a little risk at minus 130 on BetMGM, where you can use our promo code Awesemo for a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. 6 yards? Ben, 6 yards? That's one quasi. That's not even a full scramble. That's a quasi scramble. That's like falling forward after taking a couple of steps. 6 yards on the ground? I'll lay the 130 there. Just even if I lay a half a unit just to have fun with this thing, I think it's worth making a play on it simply because, again, Carr isn't a statue. Like, this isn't Joe Flacco out here. What is this at 5.5? I would think that this is significantly low just on the surface of it alone.
It's, I always wonder, and listen, I think as everyone watching the show can see that I was never close to being an NFL quarterback in my time, but I look and sometimes I kind of wonder, why don't these guys run a little more when it's wide open? Derek Carr is a perfect example. He's had some games when he does scramble, he gains 10, 15 yards. He keeps the defense honest. He just has a lot of games where he literally has 0 attempts. And that's my biggest worry. If you get 2 rushing attempts from him, you're going to get there. Maybe even with 1. The problem I have is he has a lot of games where he says, you know what, he's not willing to pull the ball down and run. So I think that you could be okay there. You kind of hope, to me, that I think it'd be better if the Raiders are losing, because when they're losing, these guys are dropping back so often. Sometimes the running lanes open up, and all it takes is one of those scrambles where everyone drops in coverage and he walks for a first down and it's over. It's not like sacks count against you. So I don't mind it. It's just a fact. It's a fun sweat. I'll give you that, because all game you're going to be yelling at the TV, run, run, run. Yep. They're not going to have a spy on Carr, that's for sure.
Kickstart DFS thought it was too easy to not bet the over. Right there with you, by all means. No, I think it was fantastic. Brian Claremont, worst beat: Atlanta, Green Bay, and Raheem Mostert. Now, of those 3, I'm curious, and again, we'll take them all on the chat. If you're watching post live show, leave it below, and we'll come back to these throughout the week, as we're on now 4 days a week here: Monday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday morning. So we have plenty of time to go back and read and bring them on throughout the shows. Which of those 3? Here's the thing. I wouldn't classify Atlanta in the same beat as the other 2. Like, Atlanta is a bad football team, and as disappointing as their efforts were, I look at Atlanta as like a super bad DFS beat, because the second half is where guys like Ridley and Gage and Pitts should have got points simply because they were down so much, but they were awful. I mean, they just were so bad. Green Bay, like, I don't care how many times you run or crunch lineups versus how many times you go through that line, especially being on a neutral field. I'll stand on that loss on that hill. I'll die on that hill that it was the play to take Green Bay -3 on that neutral field. That really disappointed me more so than anything. And look, Mostert, like Fitzpatrick, Ben, these are injuries. And yeah, I mean, that's like Jerry Jeudy. Like, these are just injuries that you just get bit in the ass, and there's nothing you can do about that.
So there's 2 different types of, I think, quote unquote, bad beat. You got like disappointing teams. To me, Green Bay, Atlanta, I put the Colts in there. Teams that I thought would play better, they didn't. They didn't particularly get unlucky. It was just bad. And then you got like the Niners. To me, that's a horrible beat because they should have covered. Mostert, he would have gone over that rushing prop. Kevin Bloomfield puts in Georgia State. They had some issues on Saturday.
That's my fault. Sorry, guys.
Iowa State, they would be in the disappointing category, not the bad beat category. They're all-American running back literally gave the defense a touchdown. He threw the ball to the wrong team on a fumble, but that's neither here nor there.
Disappointing for you, mind you, not
It
necessarily
was.
disappointing for me.
No, credit to you. You on the Hawkeyes. They got it
I
done.
can't win the long-term battle of gloating over beating you on a pick.
When you can get them, my friend. I learned that a long time ago. We're going to celebrate our wins on this show because that's what we do. I want to ask you about one more thing tonight, though.
Yes.
We've kind of alluded to this with a lot of our analysis. We think some of these guys on the ground can be pretty effective. Over is 50.5, which is a pretty fair number. But when I dug into the time of possession last year, the Ravens were third in the entire league in possessing the ball. And the Las Vegas Raiders were also in the top half at 14th in the league. So I think it's two offenses that are pretty comfortable possessing the ball, particularly with Baltimore. I think Baltimore, they love those long methodical drives. They keep it on the ground. I kind of worry that some of these drives suck up a lot of clock. They chew down the game. I'm leaning to the under tonight. I think the offenses will be effective, but the pace and just the methodical nature will drive it under. That is one of the bets that I'm going to be making tonight on this game.
All right. I love it. And I'm with you there. And I think, honestly, there is an opportunity to take advantage of a couple of player props on the heels of what you just laid out. I believe that based off of the situation that the Ravens have, and yes, Latavius Murray is there to help make up the loss, but they still are going to throw. Hollywood Brown's been banged up. It just makes sense that this is a tight end game, really, for both teams. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about moving the ball down the field from a passing attack, I don't think you're going to see major shots to Brown on one side or Ruggs on the other side. I think this is going to be more of conservative passing plays in order, as you said, to keep possessions alive. Yeah, a lot of running. They're not going to abandon Jacobs like the Ravens won't abandon Lamar Jackson or Murray to a lesser extent. So really, to your point about the under, which I think is a great play, and I'm going to tail that here, under 50.5 as we currently have it here on BetMGM. But I think this is a great opportunity to pile on and continue to build off of that narrative of clock control and time management and keeping the football, because both teams, between Mark Andrews and Darren Waller, I think these are going to be two of the top receivers, maybe not leading as far as yards are concerned, but for example, receptions. I have over 4.5 receptions for Mark Andrews based on just the ability to move the ball short, middle field. I love that play. And that goes in kind of the narrative that we're laying out, where you said under 50.5 because of time of possession. So I think, yes, you can build off of just the underplay with a couple of player props, specifically with the tight ends, first and foremost.
Yeah, I think it all plays into the same script. And we're going to be talking about that, for showdown. It's all the same. Whether you're betting the game, you're building DFS lineups, you're trying to reverse engineer. How do you see the game going? And then who does that benefit? To me, it benefits the ground game. I think it benefits Lamar on the ground, maybe the tight ends. It's not to say we couldn't see a big play here or there, but I don't think it's going to be a shootout by any stretch. I guess I should ask you, I don't have a play on the game. I think it's a pretty fair line. Raiders unveiling the new state. It's going to be tricky for me. It's a pass. Do you have a lean on the game?
Yeah, well, this was earlier where I'm laughing because I can already see you laughing at me, shaking your head, of course, in disgust. Like, why are you continuing to play these tickets? But I had a 3-leg parlay. I had a 3-leg parlay where I took a squad you gave out. It was like the one team, and Lofty and I were talking about this on another show. It was like the one team that you missed on week 1 in college. You were like undefeated except for Houston, I think was the one.
Oh, yeah.
That, right.
They didn't score in the second half. Real good.
Nothing. So I got Houston -8 at Rice because I also saw Rice, thanks to you, with that game in which Arkansas eventually pulled away. I knew Rice just didn't have that sustainability with them. So I laid the 8 with Houston. I got 7 yesterday with Cleveland, which I desperately needed. And the third play is I had the Raiders at 5. So I know that's dropped. So I'm in at 5, and I actually feel really good with Vegas getting 5 points tonight. So and I also staked it individually, of course, as well. So that's really the only actual play that I have coming into this show. Now, I'm going to play what we gave out. I'm going to play Mark Andrews over receptions. I'm going to play Darren Waller over receptions. I'm going to play your under 50.5 as well. And then everything, all things Lamar Jackson that we laid out, that little tower about over rushing yards and longest rush. And then as well, I'm not even going to go just 100 yards rushing. I'm also going to go 75 plus as well and try to capitalize on everything. But coming into it, that's the only thing I was locked into was Vegas at +5. And I know it's since dipped.
Hey, you got a good number. That's all you can really do. If you're getting a good number in the NFL, you've done your job. Doesn't mean it's going to win, but I would take, if I could get the Raiders +5, I would gladly do that. So I think
not bad.
We've done some good work here tonight, but let's look a little. You want to look a little ahead? I know I have some college plays that you do not want to miss coming up later in the show. It's going to get egregious, but NFL Week 2. Did you take a peek
real
at these
quick
lines?
Can we, before that, can I just throw something out at you real quick?
Of course.
Okay. And this is on, and again, you can use our promo code on BetMGM, Awesemo, for a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. More people coming in. Hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed as well. We want to continue to build this amazing channel, the Awesemo Odds channel. So we need your help. And all we ask is that you subscribe and hit that like button. So, and I'm putting you and Jordan, of course, on the spot. This Ravens-Raiders game. Let's go back to our favorite tab, the one-game parlay. Now, we're giving out a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. So I'm going to put you in a position where you have, due to our promo code Awesemo, Ben Rasa, you have a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. So we'll put $1,000 risk-free money on BetMGM. But here's the thing. You only have the choice of the final 3 one-game parlays on this list. So I'll give them to you real quick. +1,700. Raiders win the first half. Ravens win the first quarter. So Raiders first half, Ravens first quarter, Raiders win the game +5. So Raiders are winning the game by 5 or more points. That's the first one, +1,700, right? Second one here is Raiders score the first field goal of the game. Raiders score the first touchdown of the game. And then the Ravens score the last field goal and last touchdown of the game. That's +1,750. And finally, Mark Andrews, first team touchdown. Raiders 1+ fumbles lost. Raiders over 2.5 touchdowns. Ravens over 2.5 touchdowns. That's +2,000. You only have one option to place a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. In this case, 1G. That's a stack right there. Where are you going?
Well, it sounded like
3 bets you would never place in your life.
Libs and the Zach Galifianakis meme where there's like from The Hangover where all the numbers at the blackjack table. I have literally no idea what you were talking about. Can I give one of the single game? I think none of those have a chance. I'll be honest.
No, of course not.
I'm going to go. If I had to go for one, it would be the middle one where the Raiders score the first field goal on TD and then the Ravens rally. I could see that happening. I do, if we're going to get crazy, and then we'll move on. There is one that I don't think is absolutely terrible. It's 9-1. It's Lamar Jackson, 85+ yards rushing. Mark Andrews, 75+ yards receiving, and the Ravens scoring first in the game. I don't think that that's crazy. Basically, you get 2 of the focal points for Baltimore, and you hope that they start fast. But those are more of an entertainment type bet than grinding it out. It is damn fun to talk about, though. I won't lie.
I know. And I just had to put you in that position of a hypothetical with a +1,000 risk-free bet, because you never would have placed any of those wagers.
You're right.
On your own.
And I still won't, but it's fun to talk about.
All right. Week 2. Lines are out. They came out last. I got in one that's already moved through. It has a hook on there. So why don't you begin, my friend? What jumped out at you? I'll throw a couple in there and then we'll hit college and lock it up before we get out.
Yeah, I think always, again, this goes back to the theme of the show for me. How are the books going to react and maybe overreact to what we saw in that opening game, whether it's the Saints, who looked incredibly impressive, Green Bay on Monday night, who's still a double-digit favorite over the helpless Lions. You got to look for those numbers where maybe you have to jump on quickly. There's like the Steelers at home, -6.5. We haven't seen the Raiders play. If you think the Raiders play poorly tonight, you want to bet this now. If you think the Raiders play good tonight, you probably want to wait. I got to ask you, though, you're already wearing the hat. How about the Birds plus 3.5 at home? Dangerous home dog, or are they running into a juggernaut with the Niners?
Well, I got in last night, San Fran -3.
Okay.
And I feel great about that number, not only because it's already moved a half a point, Ben, but I think this is major overreaction to week one, where the San Francisco 49ers are going to be remembered for how that game ended, not for how it began. And the Eagles are going to be remembered, and rightfully so. I mean, as a fan, the Eagles, you can't say anything negative about that football game, but I've known way too much to avoid the overreaction. And I feel like this is probably more of a 4.5 type line when you look at the game itself. Yeah, I really like San Fran on a short line, got in under the hook. So that was the one that jumped out at me, mainly because of the I thought this was way more overreaction to San Fran and how they ended the game, because the Eagles were never going to be favored in this one, and just blowing out Atlanta helped. But even if they just beat Atlanta by a touchdown and the same thing ended with San Fran and Detroit, I still think you would get this 3.5 point line. So when I saw that open at 3, that's when I jumped on San Fran, not anticipating it would move a half a point in a couple of hours, but I definitely feel better about that.
The only, looking at these, not a ton jumped out. There was one game, though, that I'm seriously going to consider locking in today. It's the Bears at home, -2.5. That's a really good number if you like Chicago. Credit to Cincinnati. I thought they were a somewhat dangerous dog. They got it done. But, I question how good Minnesota really is. And I also question how good the Rams are in a good way. I think the Bears didn't look good last night. That's a very difficult spot on the road against the team that, with Stafford, they look to be very dangerous. Now they're back at home. I think the Bears are going to look pretty good. I think they cause Burrow a lot more problems than the Vikings do. -2.5. I have a feeling I'm going to lock the Bears in and hope I get it before it goes to 3 or even 3.5 later in the week.
Yeah, especially if you can get ahead of that 3 and avoid that hook on top of that. And you're right. Definitely looks like there's momentum moving there. Let me drop one more on you before we look at college, because I know you can't wait to drop a nugget or two.
These college
ahead for college. But the Saints are only laying 3 in Carolina. Now, the Panthers had their way with the Jets team. The Jets are banged up. They're just not a good football team. We know the Jets aren't a good football team. And Carolina with Sam Darnold showed up, and you can't take anything away from them. I don't know if there's an expectation of letdown, or if people aren't sold on Jameis Winston being anywhere near consistent, what have you. But the Saints played good enough football to beat anybody yesterday. They just happened to beat a team that didn't show up 1,000,000-0. So that was the difference. Like, I don't see a letdown. I don't see anything like that. Short line on the road for a team in Carolina who has not really proven that they're on that top or right side of good quite yet. Jameis Winston, I don't see Ben coming out and throwing 6 picks against the Panthers defense. So I jumped in Saints -3 before that moves a little bit.
Yeah, it seems to be ticking up right now. So I don't mind that. That's one. And it's not to say you just blindly reverse everything. All the teams that look good, go short them. All the teams that look bad, buy them. It doesn't work like that. I will say you are buying into the Saints look absolutely fantastic. Carolina looked okay too. I don't think the Jets are any good, but Darnold did his thing. McCaffrey's healthy. Division, I tend to shy away from divisional games on the road when you're laying points. That's a tough ask for a team, but there's no doubt that if Jameis is for real, that offense is a lot more dynamic than it was with Drew Brees. I don't even think that's a hot take. They just have a vertical threat now with certainly Callaway and Harris. Kamara wasn't needed yesterday, but when he is, and that defense, I mean, I know Rodgers wasn't into it, but man, did it look solid. It's going to cause Darnold a lot of problems.
All right, brother. Let's look ahead here now.
Oh, God.
College, week 3. Anything that you have jumping on? Because I've come prepared here. In fact, I have one from a guy who was calling a game of one of the teams that's playing this week, calling one of their games last week. So I had some up close and personal insight about one that I'm going to hit you with. But you start, as always, here, week 3 in college. Look ahead.
I got some stuff for you, and there's going to be a whole lot more. Certainly me and Matt Kajeski will be breaking it down, but there's a couple that I want to lock in. And when you hear this, you may be saying this guy is insane, but the first one, this is right up your alley. You're going to love this.
I love it.
I'm going to lay 33 points with Army against Connecticut. Connecticut
Yes.
is approaching possibly the worst team. I say a lot of crazy stuff. This is serious. I think Connecticut might be the worst team I've ever seen.
They're awful.
They are so incredibly bad. Purdue just absolutely crushed them last week. Fresno State beat them by 50 in week 1. And those are probably the most impressive showings that UConn's had where they scored no points. In week 2, UConn lost to Holy Cross, which is not even an FBS school. If that's not even bad enough, I peeked at what Holy Cross did the last week. They played someone named Merrimack and they lost. So it just shows how bad UConn is. You take an Army team that doesn't throw the ball, they're going to rush, I think, for I'd say 500 yards is a decent barometer of where that'll land. They will score on every possession with their triple option. UConn has no offense whatsoever. This screams to me that it's going to be, 45, 52 to 3, something like that. I know it looks ridiculous to lay 33, but why would Connecticut be any better against Army than they were against Fresno or Purdue? I don't see why that would change. And they've been getting crushed. Their coach quit. I'm with it, Chad. I know that's a crazy game, but I'm laying the 33.
Yeah. Look, here's what I would say too. Normally when you see a spread this large, this wide of a gap, and a number that's low, like 51 to 33.5, you think to yourself, well, it's going to be really difficult for Army to cover this spread and it not go over 52. As somebody who has been burned now by the UConn totals, stay away from this thing. Stay as far away, because this is a 49-0 game written all over it, to where you see this cover 33.5 breeze, but you can't rely on UConn to do anything. They were in field goal position twice last week against Purdue, where I needed just one field goal and I couldn't get that, and they would go for it because their season's already over. So just a word of caution there. When you see a total like that so close to the number, stay the hell away from it.
I mean, they've played 2 real schools, Fresno State and Purdue. They've scored a total of 0 points.
They're terrible.
They played Holy Cross and they gave up 38 points to Holy Cross. So I'm telling you,
oh my God,
Army's a legitimate team. They looked good last week. I know they got backdoored on the spread, but they're a solid unit. They're gonna absolutely destroy UConn. This spread is not high enough. I don't think this is a hot take, chat. Remember this: 33 points. By the time Saturday kicks off, this will be over 5 touchdowns. This spread. This is going to go north of 35 once the public jumps on this number.
Any other college plays to look ahead? Make sure you hit us up in the chat. Again, doesn't have to be live here, as these plays are days away. So if you have anything to keep an eye on, it can be your lock it up as well. Hit us up in the chat, leave us a like, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure you're subscribed to the Awesemo Odds channel. I'm going to sneak this one in here because I do a show with Barrett Brooks, who played in the NFL, a Kansas State alum, and he calls games now for ESPN. So he called that West Virginia Long Island game this past week, 66-0 game, right? And here's Va Tech getting points on the road at West Virginia, ranked Va Tech on the road at West Virginia. And what Barrett said as a former offensive lineman is that even though West Virginia was dominating that game from a point standpoint, they never really got physical. Like, they weren't mauling guys. They weren't instilling their will on Long Island. They were just better. They were just better and like talented from that standpoint. But it wasn't like, putting your hands around somebody and putting them to the ground every time, where dudes were just flat on their back. And I think going up against a team now in Va Tech, after you had basically a fluff piece that you ran through this past week, I'll take the 3 points now. Va Tech on the road at West Virginia.
This is going to be a very, very interesting game. Tough game. Home field is massive. I've been shorting West Virginia. I had Maryland in that outright in week 1, and they were able to get the job done. Virginia Tech pulled the upset against North Carolina. Virginia Tech was at home. Maryland was at home. Going to Morgantown, I don't know if you've ever been there, but that is a dangerous place to play. I do think that Virginia Tech is the more talented team. They're the better team. Home field is a dangerous factor in college, but I like that. I think that Virginia Tech has found something with their offense. it's going to come down to really what they can do against Letty Brown and whatnot in that backfield. So that's a good competitive game. I don't mind grabbing the points. Not on my card just yet, but again, it's very early in the week. It's just Monday.
All right, lock it up, my friend. You, me. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me give you one real quick, and then you can put us out on a positive note. It's always good to end on a positive note where people's brains aren't in a pretzel following my lock it up. I'm going to go back to one we hit earlier. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I talk it through. I'm locking up over 5.5 rushing yards for Derek Carr. Lock it up, Ben Rasa. It's going down. 6 rushing yards tonight for Derek Carr as he narrowly escapes and hits the over.
Okay. I respect it. I'm going to be watching the game intently, hoping for a scramble for you. And yes, any place they burn couches, dangerous school, good party school. We will see. I'm going to give a 2-part lock it up. Why? Because why not? One for tonight. I've been saying this all day. I think Lamar really is going to have that rushing upside that we talked about. So that's one I've given out on previous shows. I'm going to give you another big spread before we leave here. Oklahoma Sooners, Nebraska Cornhuskers. Oklahoma is a 22-point favorite in this game. That's a lot of respect for a Nebraska team that I don't think is any good. Oklahoma in week 1 was sleepwalking, and they won 40-35 against Tulane. Really ugly performance. They showed that they were quite angry. They won 76-0 in week 2. Now, obviously, they played a team that's not even remotely at their level. I'm more saying that when you see a team run it up like that, it shows they were quite angry. They could have won the game 40-0 like Alabama does every week when they play the Western Carolinas of the world. Nebraska coming into Norman, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Oklahoma's offense is going to hang 50, 60 points. I see no way that Nebraska can keep up at all. They're not a good team. They lost to Illinois, who has lost 2 horrendous games to begin the season. So, yeah, they beat Buffalo in Lincoln. That means nothing. Oklahoma's going to absolutely crush them on Saturday. So, lock it up. Sooners a big-time win, going away, 30, 40 points, wouldn't shock me.
I love it.
Or Leslie,
Absolutely,
I had no idea she
it.
was in the chat, but it's true. I hate to say it. Nebraska's going to get crushed this week.
Yeah, I got to be honest. It's tough to go against that one, especially with the number there on Nebraska. That's fantastic. All right, write it all down. Make sure you got everything. If you missed something, go back and watch it over because we gave you a bunch to digest, not only tonight, but also the week ahead, both in the NFL and college football. Thanks to Jordan producing. Thanks to BetMGM for powering the show with odds. Again, go up there, use our promo code Awesemo for a risk-free bet of up to $1,000. That's Ben Rasa at JazzRaz DFS. He's all over the place. Betting you, the Awesemo Odds channel, the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. He'll be on in 12 minutes with Lofty and myself. So make sure you're just following along everything and you're subscribed to all 3 of our channels. All right, my friend, we're back Thursday and we have a lot to get to. See you. Have a great day. Good luck.